Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really zeroing in on a key moment, Pope Leo XIV's initial response to the conflict in Gaza.
Which came, almost immediately after his election.
Exactly. And it's happening against this really difficult global backdrop, lots of conflicts simmering.
In a very charged time, definitely.
So to really get under the skin of this, we've pulled together quite a bit of material. We've got analysis from places like Catholic World Report, America Magazine.
And news reports, too. Newsweek, EWTN, BBC, The New Arab.
Yeah, even looked at a Reddit thread for some, early public takes. Plus, we have some briefing docs on the Pope himself and, importantly, on Vatican peace diplomacy generally.
Right, the historical context.
So our mission for you today is to, understand what Pope Leo XIV's first moves really signify. How do they fit into that long papal tradition of pushing for peace?
And also understand the Vatican's sort of unique role in all this. It's not like any other state actor.
Definitely not. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the first thing that really jumps out is just how quickly he addressed it. He was elected May 8th, 2025. Right?
Just over a week before this statement.
Exactly. And then May 21st, his very first general audience, he's talking specifically about Gaza.
Yeah.
Calling for fighting to stop and, crucially, for humanitarian aid to get in.
Yes, and he specifically mentioned the suffering, didn't he? Children, the elderly. That came through really clearly in the reports.
It did. Newsweek even ran that headline, New Pope inherits Gaza War. Really sums up the weight of it.
It does. And it's striking coming so soon after Pope Francis passed away. Francis was also very outspoken on Gaza.
That continuity is definitely there. You feel it.
And those online reactions you mentioned? Even a quick glance shows it's complex. People see it differently.
Oh, absolutely. You saw some praising it as, a necessary moral voice, defending life. Others immediately jump into the politics of it all. Who's responsible, the root causes.
It just shows how deeply this conflict resonates, how many nerves it touches.
Instantly.
Now, this idea of popes calling for peace, it's not new, is it? It feels like something the papacy has been doing for a long time.
Oh, for sure. It's a very established tradition.
So maybe looking back helps us understand the significance of this pope's first words on it.
Absolutely. That Catholic World Report piece by Francis Rocca, it lays this out really well. Papal calls for peace, certainly on a global stage, go back to at least the early 20th century.
Like who, for example?
Well, think about Pope Benedict XVI during World War I. He tried hard to mediate, to get the sides talking, even though ultimately it didn't stop the war.
Right, but the effort was there.
The effort was absolutely there. And then you have St. Paul VI at the UN, that famous "No more war, war never again" speech. Very powerful moments.
So what gives the Vatican this kind of platform? They don't have an army. They're not, an economic superpower.
That's the really interesting part. Rocca points this out, too. It's their unique diplomatic position. Neutrality is key. They're a sovereign entity, but they're non-aligned. They aren't tied to the big political or military blocs in the same way.
Which means they can talk to people others can't?
Precisely. They can often maintain channels of communication with all sides in a conflict. Think about Pope Francis and the U.S.-Cuba thaw. The Vatican played a quiet but significant role there.
Right, I remember that. Of course, that neutrality can sometimes be tricky too, can't it? Some might see it as not taking a strong enough stand.
It's a constant balancing act, absolutely. Especially in conflicts that are so deeply polarized like this one.
And Pope Francis, he wasn't just focused on traditional diplomacy, was he? I seem to recall him speaking about things like AI ethics too.
He was very engaged on multiple fronts, addressed the G7 on AI, yes. And you had Cardinal Zuppi's mission.
Ah, yes, a peace envoy.
Sent to Kiev, Moscow, Washington, Beijing, trying to find paths towards peace in Ukraine. It shows a consistent pattern of active engagement.
All rooted in that fundamental idea that war is, a failure.
Exactly. As Francis put it in Fratelli Tutti, war leaves the world worse off.
Yeah.
It's a failure of politics and of humanity. That's a direct quote.
Okay, so into this long history, this established pattern, steps Pope Leo XIV, first American pope. What do we know about him, his background?
Well, born in Chicago, 1955, he's an Augustinian. And his background is quite interesting academically and pastorally.
How so?
Degrees in mathematics and canon law.
Huh. That's an unusual combination.
It is. Very analytical, but also deeply rooted in church law and structure. Then he spent time as a missionary in South America, was a bishop in Peru.
Okay, so experience outside the usual European centers of the church.
Definitely. And before becoming pope, he headed the dicastery for bishops. That's the Vatican office that handles selecting bishops worldwide, a very influential role.
So the math background suggests maybe an analytical mind. The missionary work suggests hands-on experience with poverty, maybe displacement.
It seems very likely that his time, especially in South America, dealing with issues of, exclusion and hardship, will inform how he views humanitarian crises. The briefing docs certainly suggest that.
And the name he chose, Leo XIV. Any significance there?
Oh, yes. It's seen as a direct nod to Pope Leo XIII.
Who is known for
really engaging with modernity, the Industrial Revolution, social changes. Leo XIII wrote foundational encyclicals on social justice, like Rerum Novarum.
So choosing that name might signal that Leo XIV sees parallels today with technology, digital revolutions, those kinds of challenges.
That's the interpretation, yes.
Yeah.
EWTN pointed that out. It suggests the focus on how the church engages with today's big shifts.
Okay. So we have this pope with this particular background facing this immediate, devastating conflict in Gaza. Can you just briefly remind us of the situation there?
Sure. The current phase of the war started after the Hamas attack on Israel back in October 2023,
right,
which led to Israel's large-scale military operations in Gaza. The human cost has been immense. Reports cite very high casualty figures within Gaza.
And the humanitarian situation, that's what Pope Leo focused on initially.
It's dire. That's the word used again and again. Aid trucks are getting in, but reports say distribution is incredibly difficult. There are bottlenecks. The UN keeps warning the aid is nowhere near enough.
Famine warnings, malnutrition, especially among children.
Yes, those warnings are stark and persistent. And there's significant international pressure building on Israel over both aid access and the way the military campaign is being conducted.
A truly grim picture, which makes the Pope's call for aid even more urgent. Now, when the Church or the Pope speaks about a conflict like this, what's the framework? Is there a sort of theological toolkit they use?
There absolutely is. It's called Catholic Social Teaching, or CST. Think of it as a body of principles developed over centuries, applying gospel values to social, economic, and political life.
Okay.
And publications like America Magazine really emphasize how CST provides the lens through which the church analyzes something like the Gaza conflict.
So what are some of the key principles from CST that apply here?
Well, the absolute foundation is the life and dignity of the human person. CST insists every single person, Israeli or Palestinian, has inherent worth.
So condemning the violence against civilians on all sides.
Unequivocally. Any loss of innocent life is condemned. Then there's the preferential option for the poor, vulnerable, and oppressed.
Meaning
you have to pay special attention to those who are suffering most. In Gaza right now, that clearly points towards the immense suffering of the Palestinian population, the civilians caught in the middle.
That makes sense. It's about focus, about priority. Are there others?
Yes. Another really important one is the common good. This isn't just about individual rights, but about creating conditions where everyone in society can flourish.
So looking for solutions that benefit everybody involved, promoting justice and equality for all.
Exactly. It pushes towards political solutions that respect the rights and dignity of both peoples. And these principles, taken together, are what underpin those calls we hear for a ceasefire, for hostage releases, and for that urgent humanitarian aid.
So Pope Leo's statement wasn't just a personal opinion. It's grounded in this deep tradition of church teaching.
Very much so.
What were the initial reactions like when he was elected and then made this statement, particularly from leaders in the Middle East?
Actually, quite broadly welcoming initially. The New Arab reported congratulations from Palestinian President Abbas, who stressed the Vatican's importance. Even Hamas sent a message, hoping he'd condemn what they called the genocide in Gaza and support justice. Leaders from Egypt, Qatar, the UAE, the influential Al-Azhar University in Cairo, they all send positive messages.
Interesting. What about Israel's reaction?
Prime Minister Netanyahu also sent congratulations, mentioning strengthening Catholic-Jewish ties. That was reported in Newsweek and the New Arab.
Okay, so initial diplomatic courtesies, but also perhaps hints of expectation.
Definitely. And there's a strong sense, mentioned in several analyses, that how Pope Leo XIV navigates the Gaza situation could really set the tone for his whole papacy. It's seen as a defining challenge right from the start.
A huge amount of pressure so early on. Now, you mentioned he made a statement at his first general audience. What exactly are these audiences? How important are they?
They're actually a core part of the Pope's public ministry. Along with things like the Sunday Angelus prayer, the general audiences are a regular way the Pope engages with pilgrims and the wider world.
So it's a teaching moment?
Yes, primarily. It's a chance for catechesis, for teaching about the faith, but it's also a platform to speak about current events. about urgent global issues.
And his first teaching was on hope, wasn't it, for the Jubilee year?
That's right. EWTN reported that. The theme was hope.
So weaving the call for peace in Gaza into that theme of hope makes sense.
It fits the pattern. Popes have traditionally used these audiences precisely for that, to make appeals for peace, to highlight humanitarian suffering, to call the world's attention to crises. It's a direct line of communication.
Okay, one last thing I saw mentioned. The chair of Peter. There was something about it being displayed. What's the symbolism there?
The Cathedra Patri. It's a very powerful symbol. It represents the Pope's authority as Bishop of Rome, his role as the successor of St. Peter, and specifically his teaching authority.
The cathedra being the bishop's seat or chair in his cathedral.
Exactly. It symbolizes his duty to teach and safeguard the faith. There's an ancient wooden chair, believed to be Peter's, encased in this magnificent bronze reliquary by Bernini in St. Peter's Basilica.
And it was recently displayed.
Yes, apparently the wooden chair itself was visible during restoration work on the Bernini casing. Seeing it serves as a tangible link back through centuries of papal teaching and authority. It visually reinforces the weight of the office Pope Leo XIV now holds.
And the responsibility that comes with it, including that call for peace.
Absolutely. It connects his contemporary calls for peace directly back to the foundational role of the papacy.
Right. So, wrapping this up, Pope Leo XIV didn't wait. He engaged immediately with the Gaza conflict, stepping right into that long papal tradition of peace diplomacy.
A tradition guided by those core principles of Catholic social teaching we talked about.
And it's clear the situation is incredibly complex, the reactions are varied, but his intervention was noted globally right from day one.
Definitely. It really underscores the unique platform the papacy still holds, that moral and diplomatic weight. Which kind of leaves us with a question for you, the listener.
Yeah, what does this all mean for us?
Well, thinking about these principles and the Pope's call, what role can individuals play in actually supporting peace and justice? It's easy to feel powerless, but what can be done?
And also looking ahead, how might Pope Leo's background, being American, his specific experiences, how might that shape his approach not just to this crisis, but to others down the road?
It's certainly something to watch, a lot to think about.